When you open the dungeon doors to the world of HeroQuest, the most common green-skinned foe you'll encounter is the orc. But what are these creatures really? HeroQuest never fully explains them, and that's also part of its magic, as it leaves so much to the dungeon-ruling player's imagination. The origins of these orcs' biology and culture so remain shrouded in mystery, leaving that room for speculation, adaptation, and myth. Are they corrupted mortals, spore-born monsters, or something in between? Let's dive into the hidden lore and evolving theories surrounding the orcs of HeroQuest. If you're interested in my painting process, I do send those videos over to Patreon to keep things better organized, and I do want people to see them, so I keep them at the lowest possible price. So if you just enjoy the lore, stick around. But if you're more or also interested in that monstrous miniature painting side of the hobby, do give me a visit over on the other side of the internet. In the base game of HeroQuest, orcs are presented simply. Brutish warriors, stronger than goblins, but not as fearsome as chaos warriors, or the Fimmers. They act as the muscle of the dungeon, the ever-present enforcers of Zargon, the great evil warlock wizard of chaos. The game itself was light on lore, designed to be accessible to new players, but because it was co-created with Games Workshop, the orcs of HeroQuest are heavily influenced by Warhammer Fantasy greenskins. Their design being stocky, green-skinned, tusked, armed with crude blades, mirrors the Warhammer orcs of the late 1980s. But let's see what role they had in this somewhat different realm, or possibly singled out small portion of the bigger realm or universe of Warhammers. Orcs are the backbone of the Chaos Army here, forming the rank and file in dungeons and strongholds. They are the most numerous of the horde. They appear from icy wastes to underground ruins, suggesting they spread easily, thriving anywhere chaos touches. Unlike goblins who are skittish, orcs are bold and brutal, yet they still bow instinctively to stronger power, serving chaos sorcerers, warlocks, and champions without question. There's an orc warlord, which tells us that there is hierarchy where strength earns command. Obviously, in this little portion of the world of HeroQuest, their biology and such isn't disclosed in much of any detail, but gathering notes from Warhammer, we can confidently point out these details. As for their size, they can have a pretty decent range, such as humans do, maybe even a wider range than that, as we can find them from 4 feet tall to 7 feet tall, but then some even much larger, and we'll get into that in a moment. Their builds are thick and muscular. Their skin is always green, pigmented by something akin to chlorophyll, as we find in plants. And it is tough. Boar skin tough. They feature tusked mouths, heavy brows, broad noses, all giving them a brutish, bestial look. As far as their strength, they hit harder than goblins, let's just say that. But they aren't as resilient as larger monsters, which suggests strong muscle but not extraordinary endurance. The color of their blood, if red, is very dark. Their diet, as far as what they eat, we will be getting right into this in the next section for reproduction, but they are a fungoid, or largely a fungoid, mobile species. Therefore, their digestion is probably quite open, meaning they would be omnivorous with that twist that their fungoid anatomy would allow them to absorb any organic matter. Rotting meat, plant matter, and probably the more rotten the better, anything is for that matter, battlefield remains, and even the fungi spawned from their own spores above ground could nourish them. So with that, and with that glimpse at their anatomy, we can imagine that they have quite the healing factor. Not quite as drastic as that of trolls, but certainly faster than in that of humans. Like mushrooms sprouting overnight, orcs recover from wounds fast, sealing gashes, regrowing tissue, and returning to battle with terrifying speed. And yes, I did say regrowing tissue, and that means entire limbs. So now let's jump into the reproduction factor of these asexual monstrosities. Here's where things get truly fascinating. In Warhammer Fantasy, orcs are not mammals at all. They are fungal/animal hybrid species that reproduce through spores. There is a certain type of assimilation going on here. When an orc dies, and even before that, its body releases microscopic spores into the soil. These spores germinate into fungus mats underground, which over time bud into goblins, orcs, and some other green-skinned creatures. This explains several things. There are no females of the species. Orcs don't need them. They reproduce asexually through spore shedding. Orcs appear almost anywhere. A battlefield seeded with orc blood may sprout new tribes years later. Goblins and orcs are essentially different growth results of the same fungal spore ecosystem. Their growth may be tied to violence itself. The more they fight, the more spores they shed, the more they grow. Chaos rewards brutality with biological expansion. The fungi that sprout from their spores above or below ground may serve as both nursery and food source. And so, as mentioned earlier, orcs may feed on the very corruption they create. While HeroQuest never says this outright, the connection to Warhammer makes it a very plausible background. It also explains why the heroes never encounter orc villages, women, or children in the game. The dungeon itself is their breeding ground. Within this small glimpse, should we call it, within the world of Warhammer, we can take little notes on their cultural traits. They are violent and warlike, instinctively forming into war bands. They craft crude weapons and shields, enough to arm themselves, but never with the skill of, say, dwarves. They respect only strength. In dungeons, they follow stronger monsters like the Femur or the Great Gargoyle, without complaint. Cowardice sometimes shows when they are outnumbered, suggesting they're not fearless automations but creatures of instinct and survival, so they can be broken, probably making it that much easier for Zargon to rule over them. All in all, if the spore theory holds, then every dungeon is more than just any lair. It's part of a biological plague of chaos. The more orcs die, the more spores seep into the stone and soil. Even victory leaves behind the seeds of future warbands. And if their healing is as rapid as their growth, then even the wounded may rise again. Maybe this has something to do with the heavy population of undead that share these dungeons with them. Orcs don't just infest, they endure. They feed, they regrow, they multiply. The dungeon itself becomes a living womb of war. The orcs of HeroQuest are more than just fodder for the heroes' blades. They are the ever-present shadow of chaos, brutal, numerous, and perhaps, probably, part fungus, born of the corrupted ground itself. Whether you see them as twisted mortals or spore-spawned creatures of pure evil, one truth remains. When you open the dungeon door, you will find them waiting. And with that, I finish my presentation of the lore and physical aspect here of the orcs of HeroQuest. And if you're ever interested, I do have all the miniatures that you see painted here in these videos available on my Etsy. And with the code word Monsterite, you can get 15% off anything on my Etsy page. And that's something I want to give back for you being here with me at World of Monsters. What creature shall we give life color next to and explore the lore of?